Подключается.
Все. Потом отмечать надо сразу отсюда, оказывается. Она не вернется.
А как вы вот это двигаете ими вот на панели? Вот так вниз, да?
Буду.
Кім бар, кім жоқ. Бір рет ол кіреді да, потом кете салады ғой.
Жоқ, бәрі отыру керек.
Жоқ, онымен қалай не қыламыз біз?
Енді маған сложно, но у кого там 7, 8, быстро отмечать сразу.
Давай пошарим.
Соны наверное, ребят надо попросить, чтобы они писали группу, если у вас поток. А если одна группа, тогда ладно. Вот сонда надо попросить, чтобы они написали сначала группа, топ, 11, а потом...
А мына неге регистрация жасаған кезде ма?
Иә, жоқ, регистрация
Здравствуйте.
Ага.
Здравствуйте, Шапай. Меня слышно?
Да. Вообще-то вас не должно быть слышно. Отключайте лучше.
Хорошо.
Я вижу вас. Меня слышно же, да?
Да, вас слышно.
Хорошо. Все. Теперь демонстрация экрана. Brain Green. Пожалуйста, ребята, пишите свои фамилии, имя и группу желательно тоже, если поместится. Я знаю, что в этом потоке только топ, тогда только напишите 11, 12, я не знаю, 21, 22. Хорошо? Потому что я буду сейчас по списку все это проверять. Окей. Сегодня у нас... Хаспа систем. Все видно вам экран? Можете в чате писать, если что-то будут неполадки. Если все нормально, значит я буду дальше продолжать. Okay, we have just 34 students, and to the end of our lecture, it will be just continued duration of about 40 minutes. So at the final 5 minutes, maybe I will take attendance. Okay, so just keep it. So today we'll take introduction to HASP system. So you know what is the HASP system from above disciplines. So today we'll take what is the system and the FAO, which is Food Agriculture Organization. Okay. Паша, Рана, естіліп тұр ма? Кивните головой, если слышно. Или ми А2. Ми А2 деп тұр ғой? Кім бұл? Пожалуйста, напишите имя, фамилию лучше, ладно? Паша, Рана, естіліп тұр ма? Көрініп тұр ма? Алло. Окей, ладно. Все нормально, да? Гүлнұр, естіліп тұр ма, Бекмұрзаев? Көрініп тұр ма? Видеоларыңызды өшіріп қойсаңыздар да болады. Сіздердің нелеріңізді көрсем болды. Ат жөндеріңізді. Ат жөндеріңізді толық жазыңыздар, өйткені мен журналға сіздердің ат жөндеріңіз бойынша ғана тіркей аламын. Okay, FAO risks food inspection. So, as a prerequisite to the HASP implementation, as a good hygiene practice and a good manufacturing practice, are replaced, right? So is constitute essential prerequisites. It's the GXP and GMP to the HASP. So of course, the ideal situation is to set up a new factory following the rules described in the guide to good practice relevant to the business. So that's much easier than trying to implement practices in very old factory, right? So it can be destroyed, therefore it can be very rats on the nest of the raw country causes. So again, it doesn't make any sense to go to for HASP in a factory where rats nest on the raw materials. Okay? So it's still logical. So as a good practice of the hygienic practice, we know that all of the practice regarding the conditions and the measures necessary for ensure the safety and suitability of food at all and stages of the food chain. Пожалуйста, кто рисует на доске? Ничего не трогать. Хорошо? Только слушаем и конспектируем у себя. So next is the HASP is the methodology and system to manage hygiene, which needs through hazard analysis and proper management of the critical control points, the critical CCP, as you understand, right? So the way it works, it takes as a system which we are using to manage hygiene given by the process. First is identification of the potential hazards for the product, safety, determination of appropriate actions to ensure the control these hazards to CCP. So you should define which control points would you like to take. Yeah. So you know if you have food about the dairy products. So first of all, of course, you are thinking about the microbiological safety, right? And monitoring the control procedures to ensure the effectiveness. So all of the steps which you are taking to ensure the safety, of course, you are entering to this procedures. So then you're just monitoring the control points, right? Next is reviewing control procedures periodically and whenever operations change. So critical control points, it's the step at which control can be applied and essential to prevent or eliminate food safety hazards to reduce at an acceptable level. Никто не рисует на доске. Слышим? Then the way it works to identify all potential hazards, then to define appropriate actions to ensure the control of these hazards, to make sure these actions are effective and to review them on a regular basis or whenever there is a change in process. Кто включил звук? Выключайте, пожалуйста. Это ничего не трогаем. А то у нас здесь будет эхо. Рана, Пашар, звук отключаем. Пожалуйста, старост, попрошу. Вас друг друга, я надеюсь, видно. Отметьте, кто был, хорошо? А потом я сама проверю. И мне на чат скинете. Okay. Next is regarding of the key of the 4 elements we have mentioned. So the implementation of the HASP is based on the 7 principles. So some of the k elements being splitted into 2 or 3 principles. Жазамыз. So it's the we are splitting into 2 and 3 principles. So overcharging principle that we use to call principle is 0. Okay, so it's actually 8 principles, not 7. So it's about human aspects and the production parameters. Principle 1 is the hazard analysis and the principle. So in the hazard analysis, we have a human aspects and production of the parameters. And second is the second principle is a CCP determination. Yeah, so critical control point determination to check whether we have dealing with the CCP. Шыңғыс, выключаем. Дана тоже выключите. Фермихан. Okay, so principle 3 defines the critical limits of the CCP between which the product is safe. And then principle 4 describe the monitoring system for the HASP. So what we are talking about at the first stage, that we all of the determine by the hazard analysis, and then we can control these points, right? So the monitoring system for CCP have a between which the product is safe and the critical limits. Then describe the monitoring system, and principle 5 gives the corrective actions in a case of loss of control of the CCP. Of course, when you are determining, you know that which is the verification of the system, which is give us corrective action in the case of the loss of the control, answering the question, does it work? Yeah, so if it is regularly on the basis doesn't work, or some cases which is regarding by the technological steps, maybe making this not correctively working of the human aspects, maybe. So you're the answering the question, does it work or not? Okay, so the establishment of the effective system for registration of these products and data that documents to the HASP. So by the HASP we have verification and some reports. Yeah, so the main stage of the reports. So all of the 7 principles can be completed following. As you can see, 12 different steps. So there's 20 steps being more or less completed, one after the other. So this 12 steps will be explained in a detail during this course. Okay. So first, we are selecting the HASP team. So for the HASP team, we know that contain all of the employee, from the director to I don't know who is working on this factor. And also you can, of course, can take consulting of the experts. And then by this team, you are choosing the people who have the key technological process, right? And then describe the product. Then intents, which is it's intended to use. So just follow the diagram and followed by on-site verification. All of this about the first stage as a human aspects and production parameters. Then when we are collecting all of this data, so we can know that first principle is collected, right? So for the second principles, we are using hazard analysis. So for the hazard analysis, first we identify, have a preventive measures and criticity. So it's depending on the product, of course, it will be critical points, right? So it's the when we are talking about the chemical factors, biological factors, all of them have the criticity. So all of this criticity, then we should divide it into on the type, depending on the type of the products and the technological process which we are done, and by the parameters, of course, it will be changed. And then we are identify CCP. By the identifying it as a determination, so what kind of the steps making this, for example, errors, right? So we identify this and then establish critical limits. So what kind of the critical limits can be done by this, on this point, yeah? So for each points, of course, it will be established critical limits. So on the beginning of the technological process, of course, it will be more high possibility of getting dirty, and then to the next technological process, we can evaluate and make more critical limits. So next is monitoring system for CCP. So as you can see, it's the principle number 4. And then there is going to establish a monitoring system for CCP. So as we understand it, there is a distinguish or have a processes which is not interrupted by the technological process, right? So we should establish it, which is monitoring system will be more suitable for using. So if you have kind of, I don't know, pipe, so you can see the flow of your products. So it may be making a glass, right? So of course it will be, should be safe, and you can monitor and monitor for this system. Okay. Next is corrective actions in the case of the loss control of the CCP. So when we are establish the control critical points, of course we are understanding that there can be kind of mistakes, so we should correct it. Yeah. So by the correction, we have case of the loss control of the CCP. So we are including all of these corrective actions. So it can be by the temperature, by the pressure, or by environmentally suitability, right? So also the corrective, next is system verification. So at the end of our technological properties, we can see if does it work. Yeah, so we should answer the question if it does it work. Then establish the documentation and record keeping. So if you remember from the HASP, the sanitation and sanitation and hygiene that we explained the very important of the recording and the documentation, right? So if you want monitor and see if your system work or not, so you should have documents and record keeping by the monitoring. Okay, so as by the EU regulation, so we have a kind of the applies, which is for the food, entire food chain. So it's the GMP, HACCP, GXP, all of these documents which regulated by the FAO, Food Agriculture Organization, and can be found website, and highly recommended to refer to. It's very practical. Yeah, so notable is the 852 from 2004. So it applies the entire the food chain, declaration of the facilities and accreditation, primary responsibility of the operators and terms of the safety, and compliance with the good hygiene practice. So procedures, all of this has the principles based on the food business operators and the implement of the maintained permanent procedure and procedures by this system, right? By this 7 principles. So as you understand. So use of the guides of the hygiene practices is highly recommended, and staff training is the first key of the human factor. So you should have a trained staff. Okay. As the flexibility of this criteria, we should answer the question while setting up this GXP or GMP or HACCP, what's the necessary and appropriate of the grounds of the safety and suitability of food for consumption. So the target of our works is making the safety food products, right? So it is mentioned in the Codex Alimentarius, which is highly also recommended for the all food factory. So flexibility criteria answer the question, so which is the safeties or suitability is necessary for the food consumption. So when we while we assessing the risk and setting up actions for the HACCP system, so in addition to your regulation requirement, which are more about results, that means it's very helpful to ask yourself the following question. So is what I am recommending and setting up necessary and appropriate to grounds of the safety and suitability of the food consumption for? And that's abuse and very important question in order to avoid making too much. So it's for instance, very often appropriate to have air filtration and very strong specific hygiene when it's about producing beef minced sticks, which is short shelf life, and it's probably not necessary to have such rules when it's about tuna cans and which are sterilized. Yeah? So as you can see, you are all of the specialty as a food catering, so you understand that just preparing your food should be consumed by your consumers, so it's a short time. So when you have a canned products, of course there is a lot of technology process which is accurate for as a sterilization, and it's not necessary to be flexibility about this. Okay, so it's the main point when you are making decision about your critical control points. Okay, and now we are following all of these 12 steps, sorry, at the 7 HASP principles. And the first step of the HASP team. So the HASP team, we have a management commitment, team building and training, budget and equipment, complying data, planning, frequency of the session of the team, and the schedule for the implementation of the following steps. So, because setting up the HASP is a project, the first step is setting up the team and all necessary tools related with good project management. Of course, don't forget the prerequisites that a proper implementation of a good hygiene and manufacturing practices. So in case this good practices are not, so already in place, this step of HASP can be done so. But good practices have to be the first thing to do while planning the project activities, okay? So as per all quality system implementation and also all important project, everything starts with the commitment of the management, yeah? So this commitment has also to be formal with the commitment letter distributed to all staff and signed by the top manager. The HASP team has been constituted with staff from different services and sometimes external consultant, and often it's always the staff of the HASP team has to be trained. So next to team defines. Ребята, что происходит? Почему вы отключаетесь? Все в порядке? You can write down in the chat if any problems. Okay, let me see what your дауыс естілместірге енді. Ребята, слышно вам? Алло.
Вас слышно.
А до этого было слышно?
Да, когда вы лекцию вели, слышно было.
Подождите, еще раз. До этого было слышно? Потому что я только увидела, что вы, оказывается, 10:40 мне писали, что не слышно. Я это не увидела. Но, надеюсь, вы услышали.
Да, все слышно.
Все,
было.
супер, супер. Okay. So, сегодня мы пытались разобрать HASP principles. So, we are taking about the 12 steps, which is define all of the 7 principles, right? So, what kind of the limits or what kind of the verification we can take for the CCP or the HASP system, okay? По окончанию я вам пришлю этот слайд, вы можете тоже самостоятельно сами изучить. Надеюсь, это будет нормально. Окей, у нас еще есть 5 минут, но в группе я смотрю, что-то мало людей, только 50. А должно быть у нас 3 казахские группы и 2 русские группы. Я пока сделала скриншот. Пожалуйста, вот это Brain Green, кто это? Пишите свое имя нормально. Алло, слышно? Brain Green, слышно? Кто вы?
А меня слышно?
Да, вы кто?
Ман 11721. Я через старый этот аккаунт телефона, поэтому Брайан Грин. Я не могу поменять, потому что интернет плохой.
Даниар вы?
Потом я поменяю. А?
Кто? Даниар?
Еменов Ильман, топ 1721.
Все, Именов Ильман, хорошо. Потом поменять.
Я
Кто здесь?
5 писал.
Хорошо. Так, еще кто непонятный? Все остальное вроде мне знакомы. Okay, any question for the lecture? Завершаю сегодняшнюю лекцию. Надеюсь, все понятно. У нас 2 занятия по 25 минут. Это 50, но, к сожалению, программа нам может максимально только 40 минут, поэтому на сегодня это все. Увидимся на следующей неделе на лекции, а по практическим занятиям увидимся тоже по расписанию. Хорошо? Потом по расписанию, если у вас там 10:40, пожалуйста, 10:30 заходите, потому что конференция, вот эту видеоконференцию можно осуществить только по ровно час или пол. Заранее буду писать старостам и в группу. И вот этот мой идентификатор конференции 447 471 1494 будет всегда. Все, до свидания всем. Берегите себя.
До свидания.
Пока.
До свидания.
До свидания.